President Cyril Ramaphosa is due to deliver his sixth State of the Nation address on Thursday. Will it be any different from the previous 5 addresses? Well, I don't think so. I'll explain why right after this. In his 2019 SONA address, President Ramaphosa indulged in some magical thinking, making reference to bullet trains connecting smart cities to one another. Then in 2022, last year, Mr. Ramaphosa made the following commitment. He committed to 100 days to finalize a, quote, comprehensive social compact to grow our economy, create jobs, and combat hunger. Now, politicians are prone to empty platitudes, but even by those standards, Mr. Ramaphosa sacrificed a great deal of his credibility by making extraordinary promises that he simply could not keep. It's time for the president to stop indulging in magical thinking and to get real about some of the problems that are facing South Africa. Mr. Ramaphosa has long promised to introduce economic reforms, but his reforms have not been forthcoming. In fact, the operating environment for business has become increasingly more hostile because of the policy choices of Mr. Ramaphosa and his administration. South Africa's fundamental problem is a lack of new investment. Mr. Ramaphosa believes that social compacting and investor summits will be enough to attract new investors. But what investors require is policy certainty, which they are certainly not getting under the current administration. In fact, no amount of social compacting is going to get us out of this current crisis. To unlock growth and investment, Mr. Ramaphosa needs to move decisively away from the policies that are constraining growth in the first place. This includes very restrictive localization policies, BEE, and uncertainty around property rights. The supposedly reformist president has consistently defended these policies, which have only become more onerous and burdensome under his administration. South Africa's unusually high unemployment rate, 34% under the narrow definition, is a direct consequence of these burdensome policies, also exacerbated by our restrictive labor policy framework. Until growth is restored, South Africa's unemployment numbers will only worsen. Eskom remains a single point of failure for the South African economy. There's no doubt that a lack of consistent electricity supply is damaging economic growth. But adding on to that, we also have the collapse of South Africa's transport infrastructure, as well as the constraints at our ports. All of this is adding up to increased costs of production, which are being passed on to consumers at the till. While the collapse of the electricity and transport infrastructure does represent a threat to South Africa's economy and to trade and commerce, it is also an opportunity for greater private sector involvement in the economy. However, this is not going to happen automatically. We need to get the state out of the way, and that requires making key policy changes that will enable the private sector to be crowded in. And specifically when it comes to energy, we need private individuals and firms to be able to trade in energy with one another that's unmediated by the state. In terms of rail infrastructure, it is encouraging to see that Transnet has admitted defeat and is outsourcing the Johannesburg to Durban freight railway line to a private operator. We need to see many more such moves across South Africa's failing state-owned enterprises. Opposition parties should be owning this policy debate. However, they are distracted by ego-driven personality conflicts and petty differences and squabbles over council seats. If the president were savvy, he would be embracing privatization and heading off the threat posed by the potential opposition coalition that could come to power in 2024. However, he remains shackled by the chains of the Socialist National Democratic Revolution, which is the ideological underpinning of the party that he leads. If his promises of reform are to be taken seriously, Mr. Ramaphosa needs to reject draft policy proposals that were key policy positions adopted by the ANC at its December elective conference. These include expropriation without compensation, the revision of the mandate of the South African Reserve Bank, as well as its continual endorsement of the national health insurance policy. Not only are these policies poorly conceived, but the uncertainty surrounding their possible implementation and introduction has created great uncertainty and damage. Last month, when asked about his views on the potential revision of the South African Reserve Bank's mandate, Mr. Ramaphosa said this: "It requires a constitutional amendment. It's not just a matter you embark on. It's not something that's about to happen. It's something that's being debated." So yet again, Mr. Ramaphosa refuses to be drawn on his actual position. He doesn't explicitly reject this radical policy proposal. He merely falls back on his preferred method, which is consensus and debate. For too long, many commentators have excused Mr. Ramaphosa's lack of appetite for reform on his supposed weakness within the party that he leads. However, in December, Mr. Ramaphosa successfully navigated the storm around the Phala affair, at least for now, and he was also re-elected by a fairly healthy margin at the December conference in Nasrec. So, what position is he in now? He is relatively strong, but he seems still unwilling or unable to push through the policy reforms that South Africa desperately needs. Reforming South Africa's economic policy framework will require Mr. Ramaphosa to confront the ideologues and the looters within his own party. He can still choose reform, but his track record suggests that he will be unwilling to do so. Consequently, expect more of the same wishful thinking and empty promises at this year's SONA. That's it from me, David Ansara. Just a quick favor before you go. Please do hit that like button and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. My name is David Ansara. Until next time, stay free.